So what if I told you the guy who painted the Mona Lisa also designed a robot and an armored tank? Today, we're diving into the mind of a man who was so far ahead of his time, it's honestly kind of hard to believe. Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man.
Just take a second and let this sink in. I mean, look at this list. Art, anatomy, engineering, music. Today, you'd need a whole squad of specialists to cover all this ground. But this was all one person. And the crazy part? He wasn't just dabbling. Leonardo wanted to master every single one of these fields.
Which brings us to the big question, right? How? How on earth does one person develop that kind of superhuman range? Was he just born a genius, or did he have some kind of secret? Well, that's exactly what we're going to try and figure out.
Okay, so to really get a handle on Leonardo, we've got to go back to the very beginning. Because believe it or not, the secret to his genius might just be where he came from.
So Leonardo was born back in 1452, and right off the bat, he was an outsider. He was the illegitimate son of a lawyer and a peasant woman, which was a huge deal back then. It meant all the prestigious jobs, lawyer, doctor, were totally off the table for him. He was forced to make his own way, guided not by old textbooks, but by his own two eyes and an incredible curiosity about the world around him.
You can kind of think of it like this. There were two ways to learn back then. You had the formal, official path, which was super rigid and all about memorizing what other people had already figured out. But Leonardo, he was on this totally different track. His teacher was, well, the world itself. He wasn't told how a bird flies. He was free to ask why and then go figure it out himself. And that freedom, that changed everything.
And his raw talent was just obvious. There's this amazing story from when he was an apprentice. His master, Verrocchio, had him paint an angel in a larger piece. Well, Leonardo's angel was so stunning, so much more lifelike than anything Verrocchio himself could do, that legend says the master put down his brushes and never painted again. Can you imagine that?
All right, so after making a name for himself, Leonardo was ready for something bigger. He packs his bags and heads to Milan. And this is where his mind just explodes. It's not just about painting anymore. Okay, get this. He wants a job with the Duke of Milan, right? So he writes up a letter, kind of like a resume, but he doesn't lead with, hey, I'm a great painter. Nope. He pitches himself as a military engineer. He promised the Duke he could design portable bridges, armored vehicles, basically the great-great-grandfather of the modern tank, and all sorts of wicked catapults. His artistic skill? Oh yeah, that was mentioned way down at the bottom, almost as an afterthought.
But let's be real, he was still an artist through and through. And it was right there in Milan that he created what is, without a doubt, one of the most iconic paintings of all time, The Last Supper. And this painting is the perfect example of his two worlds colliding. He uses his math nerd brain and his knowledge of perspective to make the room feel incredibly real, like you could just walk right into it. But then, he uses his artist soul to capture the raw human emotion of every single person at that table, in the exact split second after Jesus says one of them will betray him. It's pure science and pure art, fused into one.
So after his time in Milan, Leonardo heads back to Florence. And this next chapter is huge. This is where he paints the world's most famous face, and where he goes head-to-head with his biggest rival.
Of course, I'm talking about the Mona Lisa. We all know that mysterious smile, right? Well, a big part of that magic is a technique he pioneered called sfumato, which basically means smoky. It's this incredible, soft blending of tones, so there are no sharp lines. And get this, he was so obsessed with getting it perfect that he never actually gave it to the client. He just kept it with him, tinkering with it for the rest of his life.
Now, Florence also had another artistic titan roaming around, the one and only Michelangelo. And these two guys could not have been more different. You had Leonardo, older, sophisticated, brilliant, but famous for not finishing things. And then you had Michelangelo, younger, intense, a total workhorse, who was all about passion and grit. Their rivalry was legendary, a real clash of titans that honestly probably made them both even better.
So with all these ideas buzzing around, art, science, inventions, how did he keep it all straight? Well, he kept these notebooks, thousands and thousands of pages. But he wrote them in a kind of code. It's called mirror writing. He wrote everything backwards, from right to left. The only way you can read it normally is to hold it up to a mirror. This was literally his own private language.
And once we crack that code and look inside these notebooks, wow, it's like finding a blueprint for the future. I mean, the stuff in there is just mind-blowing. There are sketches for a flying machine designed after studying a bat's wing, a design for an armored tank,
a diving suit. He even sketched out plans for what you could call a programmable robot. And these weren't just cartoons, they were serious engineering drawings. He was dreaming of things that wouldn't actually be built for another 400 or 500 years. And his obsession with understanding things went deep, like really deep. To learn how to draw the human body perfectly, he didn't just study models. He secretly dissected more than 30 human corpses. He wanted to see every single muscle, every bone, every organ for himself. His drawings were so incredibly accurate that they were still being used as medical references hundreds of years later.
So where does a life like this end up? How does the story of the ultimate universal genius wrap up? Well, Leonardo spent his final years living in France, basically as a celebrated guest of the king. When he died in 1519, there's a legend, and it's a great one, that the King of France himself was right there at his bedside holding him as he passed away.
But here is something that might surprise you. For all his fame as an artist, Leonardo actually finished less than 20 paintings. That's it. Which really tells you something, doesn't it? For him, it wasn't always about the finished product. It was about the journey, the discovery, that unstoppable curiosity.
And that, right there, is the heart of his genius. See, in Leonardo's mind, there wasn't a line between art and science. They weren't separate things. They were just two different tools for exploring the exact same beautiful, complex universe. You could say art was how he observed the world, and science was how he understood it.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. Maybe Leonardo's greatest gift to us wasn't a painting or an invention. Maybe it was a way of thinking. He showed us that the real magic, the big breakthroughs, happen when you blur the lines between different fields. It makes you wonder, right? What could we all discover if we tried to see the world, just for a day, the way he did?